Hello, everyone. So in the interview with Father Dolan, I posed a question regarding daily tips for prayer, if he could provide some, and he did. So I would just ask you to watch this clip once again, and then I'll come back and give a commentary on it. Thank you.
I think for starters, it's useful to have something at hand that you can look at to give you ideas for your conversation with the Lord. One app that I find really useful is called I Pray with the Gospel. It's a collection of what's a reading for each day of the year, a very short reading that always contains a really interesting anecdote. It starts off with the gospel of the day and then it leads into the anecdote. For example, today's I found really interesting, where the gospel talks about Jesus saying, I have chosen you. And the anecdote has to do with some words of Pope Emeritus Benedict, I believe in Birmingham, where he says, I have chosen you. Well, he comments on that saying, the Lord has chosen each one of us for something very specific that only we are able to do. Well, that is food for thought, because and then it leads us to think, okay, Lord, that means that you are counting on me to do something. And if I follow through and listen to you and ask you on a daily basis, what do you want from me today? Great things are going to happen from that. And my life is going to have an impact on other people. So that just a little thing like that can open up all sorts of horizons and open up, as you were saying earlier, a real sense of adventure of what our life is all about. So that's one thing. I pray with the gospel. And if anyone can't find it, they can contact you, Father BJ. You can tell them. There's also, I find really helpful, another app called, well, it's Relevant Radio. There's a radio station out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And among the many things they have on that app, you can also listen to them. But I look at it every day because they have a reading of that day's In Conversation with God. This is a 15 minutes worth, but it can also help to be exposed to different insights of the great saints, the fathers of the church. And those too can open up all sorts of horizons. There are other times when we just set aside time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and just say to the Lord, today I don't need to listen or read anything. You and I have a lot to talk about because I'm bewildered, I'm upset, I'm anxious. I just want to get closer to you. And then that can be a great prayer, because then we have the chance to just talk things over with him to find out, okay, what is at the bottom of this little bit of uneasiness of mine? Maybe by the end of that time of prayer, we will have learned that much more about us, about ourselves. Maybe we'll learn that we were being far too self-centered or way too sensitive, things like that. A lot of different, you're right, it's a huge topic, but those are just a couple of quick ideas.
So some really helpful tips regarding prayer. First of all, in a way, it's not as complicated as most people think. It takes effort, that's true. But it's not as complicated as most people think. You have to want to do it, of course. I mean, it's like the proverbial horse that you can lead to water, but you can't make it drink. So we have to be intentional. We have to want it, desire it. That's a given. But then once those things are there, even a desire, even to want to pray is really essential, because it's not going to go perfect, or maybe for your whole life. But if you have that desire, things will happen. So a couple of helpful hints that will help prayer is, number one, use your airplane mode. you'll have to call up a couple of apps perhaps if you are going to use your phone or device, could be a tablet, to assist you in prayer. And I'll repeat some of the things that Father Dolan mentioned. But it's important to be prepared, to click that feature and put on the airplane mode. Okay, so the two apps that he mentioned that are really very good is one is I Pray with the Gospel. It gives you the brief, the gospel of the day or a brief section of the gospel, and then it gives you a meditation. That can help a lot. It's an aid to prayer. And number two is another app, Relevant Radio. Now, this has a meditation from a series of books called In Conversation with God. They are excellent. I've been using them for maybe 15, 20 years. I don't use them every day, but I still use them quite a bit. And so you get it free on the app. You get for the daily gospel, you get the meditation from In Conversation with God. And this is really, really helpful. So it's something, those are two aids that are right there at your fingertips, so you can call up the app and then put it on airplane mode. So you're, sort of cut off from the world, as it were. You don't have the distractions that plague everyone. Everyone has to struggle with this. So those are kind of, three things. And the fourth thing is that you will need to lock in a time. We all need schedules. We have them for the most part from the time we get up to the time we go to bed, right? We have basically the time we get up, the time you have to be at work, the time you get home, basic supper time and all that kind of stuff, and then the evening activities. So we need a time to pray. Try not to just pray whenever you have the chance. We have to be willing to make time to pray. And it could be that time early in the morning, getting up a little earlier. If you have to go to bed a little earlier, then that's what you need to do. Or if you're a real late night person, then fine. You can do it. But the important thing is that you show yourself you can do it consistently. And there is nothing wrong with when you get up in the morning and you pray and you're a bit groggy, have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, to kind of kickstart your system with some caffeine. Nothing wrong with that at all. So but it's really important that you lock in that time and you are consistent with it. And if you miss, go back, don't give up. Don't double up the next day, but keep going, persevere. Don't be surprised, if it just doesn't happen some days. So Father Dolan reminds us something really important, that he's quoting St. Teresa of Avila, who's a woman who knows her prayer, who says the devil will do anything he can to knock you and me off course, to make sure we don't pray. We have to remember that this is a spiritual war that we're engaged in, and our enemies are not so much flesh and blood, although there are the external temptations, but it's really from these invisible supernatural forces that are trying to knock us off course. The devil cannot make us not pray. He can only do things to distract us and have us go at a frenetic pace in life, or suggestions to convince us that we don't have time to pray. They're all lies. So, as with all things, we need to want to do this, as I mentioned a few moments ago. We at least want to do it, and just try. So a few points to recap. Number one, make the time. Number two, sit down. Or, perhaps you want to do it standing up, that's fine. Or kneel. Number three, ask Jesus and the Holy Spirit to help you to pray. That's what I do. That's what I've been taught to do. So, yeah. Number four, open your heart and your mouth. We all can talk, right? So we just need to open our mouth, open our heart, and open our mouth. And number five, in concluding, if you can't think of anything, one saint tells us or teaches us, well, then tell Jesus, I don't know what to say. I don't have anything to say. It's like, I don't know, my head's empty, my heart's empty. The saint says you've already begun to pray because you're being honest with the Lord. And it will develop, I promise you. None of us are experts. Maybe Teresa of Avila was an expert, but most of us just struggle from day to day. So, in conclusion, enter the adventure of being with and following Jesus every day. God bless you.